Thanks, Josh. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the operational board. First things first, starting on time, and I'll just get my agenda. Apologies. Just go through them again for me, Louise, please.
Mike Ainsley and James Joyce.
Okay. And before we go any further, I'd like to introduce Alan Martin, who's our new operational board member, tenant board member, and just by way of a change, he's joining us from France. So if you'd just like to all wave to Alan and say hi. If my wife's waving. I'm not aware of any late items unless you know something I don't, Louise.
No, there's no late items.
Declarations of interest. I've got nothing further to add. Has anybody got anything to add to declarations of interest? Right, so before we go into the chair's announcements, I think for Alan's benefit, if we could just go around the room and introduce ourselves, that would be good. Start with you, Louise, and we'll work around the screen.
Hi, I'm Louise Paget. I'm a governance officer and I support the board.
Jan?
Hi.
Sorry, I'll let you do, guys. I'm messing you about. Go on, Kaz.
I'll go next. Okay. Kaz Sahota, I'm the representative from Strategy and Performance Team, DCC, supporting Derby City Council reporting and also business planning in terms of delivery plan. So that's me.
Michael? You're on mute, Michael.
On mute, Michael.
That's a good start. I'm meant to be head of IT as well. Good evening. I'm Michael Kirk. I'm the finance director and company secretary.
Okay, Jan?
Hello, I'm Jeanne. I'm on the main board as well as the independent member, and I'm vice chair here as well. But nice to sort of see you. I know we've had exchanged a few emails, so nice to see you in person, sort of.
Okay, Alan, we've met. Lucy?
Hi, I'm Lucy Kerr. I'm one of the councillors on the main board and obviously on here too.
Thank you.
Yes, we have met.
The name's familiar, but I think you're more than the one, Alan Martin, and I can't think when it might have been. But good to see you.
Sorry, Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis Rees, tenant board member.
And I think you've already spoken to Lorraine, but I'll let Lorraine introduce herself.
Hi, Alan. Nice to see you again. Lorraine Testroff, Head of Housing Management.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Tony Home. I'm the leaseholder board member on the operations board.
Yeah. I've not got to answer questions at the end of this, have I?
There's a test. You've got to put all the names in alphabetical order with your eyes shut. Annabelle?
Hi, Alan. Second time I'm meeting you this week. I'm the Customer Service and Equalities Manager at Derby Home, so welcome.
Hi.
Ewan?
I am Ewan Hanna, Customer Service Project Manager.
Thank you. Mr. Bayliss?
Hi, Alan. My name's Steve Bayliss. I'm Head of Repairs.
Names are shooting all over the place, aren't they? Chloe?
Hi, I'm Chloe Gilman and I am an Improvement Support Officer in the Strategy and Performance team at Derby City Council.
And welcome to the operational board.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Sarah?
Hi, I'm also in the Strategy and Performance team at Derby City Council. I'm the new Corporate Performance Lead.
Welcome. And yes, Ian.
Hello, good evening. I'm Ian Yeomans. I'm Head of Capital Works.
Yeah.
And I think we've covered everybody who's on screen at the minute. Speak up if I've missed you, please. No, that's good. Right, chair's announcements. I was a bit disappointed that we had the meeting all online tonight, because those of you who know me will know I prefer to be in the boardroom and do the meeting. If I could just ask you to help Louise in future by if you could let her know one way or the other if you're going to attend the meeting, because there's catering implications, there's room and stuff like that. If you could just be so kind as to let Louise know if you're not attending an operational board meeting, and for that matter, a main board meeting, because it helps with catering and budgeting and stuff like that. And it's just good manners, isn't it? And the other one is on the gardening report, garden maintenance. Now, I appreciate that some of you, well, all of us, got it a bit late this time. That's unavoidable, but I do apologise for that profusely. And so that means if you anything tonight that's not covered in the conversations, could you just please ask questions of Ian, and as his colleague from Derby City Council, Street Pride, is also going to be in attendance tonight as well. So it's good we've got Street Pride here as well. So you'll get the opportunity to ask Ian questions on that segment. Is that okay with everybody?
And I apologise even more, Bob. So just chair, sorry. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I apologise even more than you. Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, that brings us to the minutes of the previous meeting, held on the 9th of June. I'll go through it first for accuracy. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. So my fingers are not working. Page 7, page 8, page 9, and finally page 10. We'll now go through it for matters arising. Page 1. Oh, apologies if somebody puts a hand up and don't see them because there's that many faces on the screen, but I will try and keep up, I promise. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. And page 10. Are we all happy that that's a true and accurate record of the previous meeting? Yeah, thank you. We'll now move on to performance management Q1 report. And Kaz, I presume this is your last one then, is it?
Yes, it's obviously, going to be presented by Michael and my colleagues, but yes, could be potentially probably is my last one. And it's been a pleasure actually working with you guys over the last 2 years. I think we've tried to develop performance reporting and the ways that the performance reports look, particularly the slide deck, which you quite like last year. So thank you for that. And I'm sure that the reports will continue to improve even further. So I think Michael's going to share the slides on the screen if Michael can, and I'll take you through.
If I could just say, Kaz, I appreciate your input, and you really reacted to the comments that was made about the presentation and the slides and that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah. So as you are pretty familiar, we'll be going through the summary slides, the first two. I know we're short of time, so I'll try and keep it brief. You've got the covering report and you've got the Doris reports, the details there. So the next slide is basically in terms of highlights, in terms of where we're on track. So we're on track as we normally are across the quarters for all of our satisfaction measures, both for Q1 and for the forecast for the end of the year. In terms of new measures, we've got new percentage of closed stage 1 and stage 2 complaints. They're meeting timescales, and those to the Ombudsman are all on target for Q1. Average relet times, this is really, really good performance. Over the last 2 years, you'll know the really improving sort of timescale and trend for this, 19.2 days against our target for 21, and that's the forecast for end of year, which is excellent. And we know that we've had challenges in the past. Property compliance, all the maintenance measures are on track for this quarter and in forecast. Rental loss through properties being vacant, these are voids. The forecast is there, we're on target for end of year. And in terms of blue, these are where we're performing better, than our targets. Number of tenants evicted due to arrears, the actual is 3 and our target is 9, because obviously this does actually fit into, and I'm sure Michael will sort of comment on this in terms of our rent collection, but obviously our ceiling was 9 and we're actually at 3 at the moment. Tenant satisfaction with listen to my feedback. Now this is a new measure based on recommendations from Housemark. Previous measures were sort of views taken into account, and they felt that the sort of the description of our target was a bit vague. So this is a more accurate target, and our performance has improved quite a bit on this new measure. So we're 86.3 against a target of 75. And then the highlights. This is sort of, if you like, the downside, but not sort of like.
Yeah, shall we just ask for any comments on the well performing headline ones first?
Sure.
If I could just clarify on the evictions, we don't actually have a target for the number of evictions. It's the figure that we have as a notional target is in recognition of what the arrears numbers were pre-COVID, which was around 35 to 40, if you like, in a normal year. So if we was to revert back to those types of numbers, it would be interesting to benchmark around those type of ones. But what we're finding with evictions is that we're still having difficulties in getting the court cases, and the significant arrears cases going all the way through to an eviction. But I think these really low numbers are a recognition of how much effort Derby Homes puts in across a number of teams to sustain tenancies. And when you consider we've got over 12,500 tenancies and we've only had 3 evictions so far this year, and from memory, I think it was either 4 last year and 2 the year before. It is a remarkable number of a small number of evictions. However, and we'll probably come. I'll go on to the impact of carrying low numbers of evictions when we come on to the rent arrears figures, which are on the next slide. But I just wondered if there was any further comments on any of these headline KPIs.
Well, I think the number of tenants evicted. This is a nice scenario. Less is good.
Well, obviously, because we want people to stay in their homes. Yeah. If it is sustainable for them, yes.
And you listen to my feedback. That's the first time we've seen the figure, I believe. Actual 86 and target 75. So that's positive. And the positive stuff above it, we're doing well in those sectors, and we'll now see. And I'm sure there'll be red areas in terms of maybe out of our control. We'll see.
Thanks, Michael. That's a valid point. That in terms of evictions, etc., you do have, you got sort of plus on one side, but obviously it's an impact on rent collection, which is a key one. But the performance on that side, it is phenomenal. I'm sure we're sort of up there in terms of, organisations across the country. On the flip side, if you like, the performance measures that's showing red at the moment. Satisfaction new home is 83.3 against a target of 93 for Q1, but we are forecasting to be on target on that 93 mark for end of year. New home starts and delivered, forecasting 40. The target is 60. I'm sure Ian will comment on this. We've had issues like anything else in terms of, COVID and the current state of the market. Ian will elaborate on that. Rent for current tenants, percentage rent roll, actual 3.6, target 3.2, but we're on forecasting that will be on target for year-end target 3.7. Obviously, Michael will comment on that later on. And the rent arrears of current tenants, the figure, this is a key measure in terms of rent arrears, 2.13 million against a target of 1.9. But there again, we're forecasting that year end will be on 2.2 million. Percentage of non-decent council homes actually 0.6, target of 0. and this is a particular sort of development in a particular area which is contributing that 5%. More on that later. And then the one that we always sort of tackle or have challenges with, not just ourselves, but the City Council and organisations across the country, sickness absence, the actual 11.6 days per FTE, and the target is 8.75. In terms of the ambers, these are the
Sorry,
ones
can I
just
just stop and ask Jan
Sure, of course.
to pose a question, because it's probably related to the red section. Jan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was actually on the satisfactions with new homes, and can see that there were, going back to one of the appendices, can see that there were 10 people who were dissatisfied, but it doesn't give us the reasons for the dissatisfaction. And I know that you're saying that we're going to be back on target by the end of the year, but I think those sorts of things, where they're the exception stuff,
yeah,
it'd be really interesting for the operational board to have a few more details of what people are dissatisfied with, so that we get an understanding of that.
Can I just clarify firstly that it's not with new homes, it's with the customer's new home. So
Yeah.
that also includes relets as well as
Yeah, I understand that, Ian, but actually, as a board member, I'm sort of interested in kind of all of our customers, if they're moving into a home, if they've got some dissatisfaction, because it might be that it could be about it's not quite in the right area for them, but when it's just reported as 10, that 10 people are dissatisfied, then without any sort of accompanying data, it's really hard to understand kind of what that's about.
And I must confess, Jan, that's the question I asked myself before you came on your hand. You know, it'd be good to see what's the reason. Some of them, you know, I'll not use the word, but it may not be, they may be out of control, but some of them may not be.
Does Steve know any more than I do, Chair? Because most of the voids go through his side, but I would have thought it might be something to do with the finish, or that could be something to do with it. We can dig it out, because we do get that feedback, so it will be we can certainly as an action go out, and we can go back and have a look at what those 10 people were unhappy with, so we can do that for you.
That's good.
And I say, if it can just be if it's included in the appendice report, just so we've got the information somewhere, you know. So yeah, it's just useful to see that, and for us to have that understanding.
Yeah, I mean we have a large number of relets in the year, so
rather than just make, I mean, some of it might be that the tenants moved to the house and they don't think it's up to the lettable standard. There can be lots of reasons, but rather than just make up some stuff now, probably the best thing for us to do is to, as you say, put it in the, if there's 10, are there any trends? What are the reasons for it? You know, particularly because there might be 10 different reasons, but there might be 7 the same, and that's a trend that we need to be looking at, which we normally do, to be fair. We feel with voids particularly that the speed is great now. I mean, you've seen that with the numbers, but obviously quality is just as important. So it is something we are and have been working on, and making the team understand that when the property goes back, it needs to exceed, if not meet, but exceed the lettable standard if possible. So we, you know, there will be some of those, I think. So let us bring stuff back to you, and then obviously you'll be able to see from meeting to meeting if there's trends as well, won't you? So that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
totally agree with you.
Thank you very much.
Lorraine, I think I can't see you, but I think your hand's up, Lorraine, and plus 2 other people.
Yeah, I don't think I was first, Bob. I can't see who else has got the hand up.
I can't see either.
I've got my hand up, Bob.
Go, Jonathan, go.
I fully support what Jan's just been saying. The other thing that's missing is, what are you doing to get back to 93%? There's no sort of indication of what changes you're making that's going to recover that customer satisfaction. I agree, if it's only 10 people and you're going to sort them out, then they say they're satisfied, that's probably it, but there's nothing to tell me that.
Yeah.
No, but statistically, you're right, Tony, because to get back from 83 to 93, we have to show improvement. We have to have some returns better than 93, don't we? So, but when you think how many properties we relet in a year, you know, several hundred, you know, if we can pick up on those learnings, we should be able to recover the performance.
Yep.
Thank you.
Shall I come in now, Bob? I think I'm the next. Right. I think just to offer a little bit of reassurance, we've done a hell of a lot of work around surveys over the last year.
And what we do is that we make sure that every customer, where we know that who the customer is, that we go back to them and we pick up on their dissatisfaction, and obviously put that right, or look at what we can do to put it right. But what we also do is we provide a summary to the managers in all the different areas, so that they can look at trends. So if there's anything that's coming up that is occurring more than one occasion for somebody, that we look at, is there a process, a procedure, is there anything to do with any particular members of staff or anything like that? So we can easily pull out that information that you're asking for. We've got it all, and I do feel a lot more confident that we, as I say, that we are actually making sure that we use our surveys in the right way to try and improve things. So I think that we'll be able to show you that quite easily.
That's good, and it's using the information we got to a useful purpose. Thanks, Lorraine. Kevin, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. Mike,
would you like me to add any more colour to the reds? Because well, we just on that, because the three there that
yeah
I can feed back to. The new home starts, it was impacted by a couple of things. One, we started our home delivered, or decent Derby Homes delivered new builds mostly just at the end of the last financial year, in Q4 last year rather than Q1. But also the housing market, strange things happened in the first part of the year, into so much as properties have been snapped up very, very quickly, and we couldn't actually afford to buy them. We were being outbid on properties, but we've noticed a change in Q2 now, and we're getting quite a few acquired properties through. And also to address the new build starts, we're procuring a package of 24 properties externally, so we're going to have 2 streams of new build deliveries going forward in the back end of this year and going forward next year. So that will improve and help sustain delivery. You've got that decent homes percentage there of 0.6. That is the properties on Bretton Avenue, the bungalows on Bretton Avenue, which have sort of structural issues with the roofs, etc. And we are addressing that. We had a second stage of a consultation with the customers there last week, where we're looking at a combination of refurbishment and redevelopment of that site, and we're trying to get we give the residents an opportunity to look at what new build might look like there. So that's working through. And I might as well, because I think we haven't got an HR professional here, the sickness issue there mainly is down to if it's split, the 11.6 is split 5.4 short term and 6.2 long term. Mainly, or a big contributor to that is mental health issues with staff, returning after COVID, that sort of thing, stress and anxiety. The whole way we work has changed. We work in hybridly, and all manner of issues there. So the whole world of work has changed, which is placing all sorts of stress on people. So that's where that's coming from. So that's a bit of feedback there on.
Thanks for that, Ian.
3 PIs for you.
Anybody else questions? No, it's good. Move on then, Michael, please. Oh, Shan.
Just sorry, Chair, I was just trying to unmute and it wouldn't unmute. Thank you for all of those updates, Ian, and particularly around the sickness stuff, because I know that's not your area as well. So thank you for feeding back about that. Is there anybody who can say kind of what's being put in place to address that, or because obviously it's a trend that's emerged?
Well, individually managers will, as part of the process, sit down with individuals and try and work through what the issues are, and if it means changing work patterns and providing support, that's what we do. So I mean, we're very much on top of sickness. We get notifications immediately, people start sickness and when it's extended, etc., and we're monitored in terms of return to work interviews. But even outside of that, we have one-to-one sessions with individuals to try and see if we can.
On top of that, though, is there anything that the organisation is doing, kind of seeing that that's something coming forward. I know that we've already got some stuff in place, but I didn't know if there was anything some sort of like the helplines that people and the occupational health that people can access as well.
Yes, we've got that. Yes, obviously. Yes, that's in place.
So good. But is there anything else that's, I don't know whether Michael, as one of the directors, is aware of anything that's being done to sort of strategically to look at that, as it's obviously an issue, because our sickness has always been much lower, and it is recognising that the impact of COVID, that it's something that's probably going to be here for a while. So what is the organisation doing about it?
Yeah, I think you're right. It is an area that is it's not going to go away, and we do need to have a look at longer term solutions, because as Ian has said, we've got the existing solutions with workplace wellness and occupational health referrals. We do work with the City Council's HR team on long-term sick cases where the individual may not be coming back to work. You know, that you only need a few individuals with very long-term illnesses, and that boosts the numbers up. I'm just thinking aloud, actually, when we were looking at that average of 6 days for long-term sick, it would be good to get context in a workforce of 600, how many employees we've actually got on long-term sick, whether it's 1%, 6, or is it 26 type of thing. So again, I think that's a bit of a learning for us in the commentary to give a bit more context to it, because it's inevitable that any organisation is going to carry levels of sickness. But you're correct, 11.6 days is higher than we've had historically. What I would say, though, is that just nationally, it's recognised now that employers have been advised to anticipate 3 absences a year from employees contracting COVID, or people getting COVID 3 times a year potentially, and therefore they may be absent from work, and that is naturally going to boost absences for those who can't continue to work from home when they do get COVID. So I think what we've done is we've set our targets at just below 9 days based on historic levels of sickness, and it may well be that is a very difficult target to actually achieve going forward. But I haven't got the answer of what we're doing over and above what we've done previously to tackle it. What I think, again, would be useful for us to take back would be to get details of the numbers of long-term sick cases, and some context of what those reasons are, and what we're doing to manage them. If it is just literally they are being managed on an individual case-by-case basis, then we'll report it on that basis. But mental health is the largest issue in relation to long-term sick, and on that it's predominantly non-work related mental health issues.
Annabelle, and then Lucy, please.
Hi, just probably a bit lucky that I'm here because I look after the Good Shape contracts. So looking at the figures, we've got 10 people off long-term sick and 5 people off short-term sick right now. We do have a couple of very long-term sicks which are going cases which are going through processes. They're not work related, the individuals are very unwell, and we're trying to help them get to where they need to go to. One of the things that Jan was asking about was what else we're doing. So we've had a couple of incidents, very sad and unfortunate incidents at Milestone House, which have impacted on a number of employees recently, and we've got some specialised counselling in place through Vita Healthcare, which is our employee assistance provider, and specifically targeted those people who have said to us they need additional support. So in the aim to support them get over an incident, but also to keep them in work. We've got occupational health clinics, which we have every 6 weeks, which are now back to being face-to-face, which are much better than virtual remote ones, and then we've seen an increase in that, but we're also seeing some short-term musculoskeletal type absences, and in order to help employees with that, we've got a fast-track system to physiotherapy at the Derby Community Hospital, which we can refer employees to. So we deal with cases, and I work with Sarah Lee and the managers, and we look at people on a daily basis and see what support we can put in place.
Thanks, Annabelle. Are you all sorted now, Lucy?
Yeah, I just crashed out. Really, really strange. May I just ask quickly on that this 3 times a year expected absenteeism from COVID is quite worrying for something that's no longer a problem. And I presume quite a lot of that is going to be sort of 5 days a time.
Well, the article I read was that people may contract COVID up to 3 times a year. Whether or not they will be absent from work is obviously dependent on what type of work they do and whether they can do it from home, and obviously how ill people do get with COVID.
That's true.
You know,
if they're working from home, it's a bit different. But the other side of this, talking about a lot of stress, I'm just wondering whether, and this is not just a Derby Homes phenomenon, it's something which is a lot bigger. I'm just wondering whether this is an aspect of long COVID, and it's not just the fact that the work environment has changed and it feels different, but actually people's sort of resilience has been undermined in some ways by COVID. And whether there's actually any research being done on that. We may not have the answer, but maybe we can ask somebody who might have an answer.
Lorraine, have you got the answer?
I don't think any of us have got that answer, but I think it's certainly worthwhile us keeping in touch with Robin over at the council as the public health officer, who, if anybody would know or would have access to that type of research, that's where we would get it from.
Right. Look, sorry, Lorraine, you've still got your hand up.
Yes, sorry, I hadn't taken myself on mute. I was trying to answer that question.
I thought you were.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention as well, if you think about the economic climate that we're in now, it's going to affect all of us, and I know that it is having some impact on staff. I mean, obviously, the extra costs and everything. So I think that's another thing that could potentially affect staff's well-being, isn't it, moving forward? Just to put that into the picture, really.
Thanks for that, Lorraine. Any questions, anybody? Thanks for the update, folks. It's been appreciated. Moving on, Michael.
Right, okay, that should have come down now, yep.
Right, I think it's probably me, Michael, just on the ambers. That's,
oh, sorry, because they were on the screen, I just assumed people saw them. If people wanted to comment, then they could have done.
Yeah, just very briefly on sickness absence, and I take on board everyone's comments in terms of sort of keeping a close eye and scrutiny on this. Yes, the numbers are high, our rates are high, but if you look at the graphs on the last slide, it will just show you that we might have peaked for Q1, when say Q1 June. So the June figures for number of days and total hours is down on last year. So that's a positive thing. And in terms of research, obviously we know that 2 factors, as Lorraine's mentioned, in terms of the impact from the cost of living crisis, that's an ongoing thing, and it will develop. It will have impacts in terms of rent collection, city council, in terms of council tax collection. So that's an ongoing script, and we need to keep an eye on that. In terms of sort of sickness absence, yes, obviously, it'll have an impact on that. What that impact will be is multifaceted, and I think it's sort of early days. But certainly the comment that Michael made in terms of the potential that people can be off for 3 times in a year is based on the fact that COVID hasn't gone away. We've got the variant of Omicron, BA5, which is still having an impact. The symptoms might be less severe, but people are off, so that does have an impact. I mean, I'm not a public health expert, so I wouldn't want to take on that mantle, but the more research will come through. There has been bigger sort of stories, I suppose, you know, in the media in the last few weeks, which has sort of, sort of put that into the background. But as the winter goes on, I think we'll see this more prominently. And I think Michael's comments are quite apt on that. So yeah, that's just wanted to add on the ambers. Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question on COVID? And I've forgotten the answer to this one. Are staff offered free COVID jabs? Or do you?
No.
I don't know. Question if you pay for it or what
pure,
these days.
No, it's purely a personal decision on COVID vaccinations. What we do is we offer a free free voucher for the flu jab to all staff.
Had mine today. Okay. Okay, thanks for the update, everybody. Any further questions? Lucy? You're on mute, Lucy.
Sorry. One of the, I don't think it was on the summary, but one of the, in the main report, there was a comment about the number of people who are moving to online interaction with Derby Homes. And there's a target for the end of the year, which we're still hoping to achieve. In the B section, in one of the surveys, it came back with a large proportion of people not expecting to move onto online connections. And I just wondered whether this had been looked at and whether there might be a bit of a mismatch here and whether we need to do more to sell the online communication systems to people, maybe a bit more hand-holding to get them on there, or whether we think that the selection of people who come back and respond to surveys might be slewed into an older age band and therefore less likely to want to interact in that way. I don't know if anyone's explored it.
Well, perhaps I can answer that in its most general form. We will be bringing back to the board an updated digital strategy. I think it's planned to come to the March board next year. And what we will be doing is looking to improve the digital offer to all of our customers. And the only way you can get engagement on the digital offer is to make that as easy and as user-friendly as possible, and also for it to be the most convenient method of communicating, because you're not going to, I hate to say this word, channel shift people to a digital form and self-serve if they think they can just ring up the phone and get a repair reported. For those who can self-serve and do things themselves, we are going to be looking at introducing IT and all this AI technology type of stuff gradually to improve the digital access to services for our tenants. Now, it's going to take time to come in, and we will be updating the operational board with it and stuff like that. But we're probably all fully aware that when we get in touch with other organisations online, there's a lot more automation at that initial contact stage. And we'll be looking to do that. And it's probably timely that we've got Annabelle and Ewan on the call for both our initial customer contacts, but also our self-serve through the website. So that's probably going to come down the line. Well, it will come down the line and will be summarised more in the digital strategy that'll be coming forward in the next few months. I saw that Steve probably wanted to jump in on reportable repairs, and Annabelle can give us an update on the customer service transformation as well.
Go on, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, I know Annabelle and members of the repairs team and others, you and a lot of people, the IT guys have been looking at reporting repairs. And I think for a few years, we've all said we'd love it to be able to report repairs online, make it easier for our customers, potentially book your appointments online. Well, there's a lot of work going in at this point in time now with a lot of staff to make sure that what we actually offer does make it, as Michael says, better than we've got already. So it's simple things for me, like if a tenant wants to report a repair that is so general that actually it doesn't help us pinpoint who needs to go and what needs to be done. So, for example, if it said something like leak, We need more, and so it needs to be very specific towards what we want, particularly from a disrepair angle as well. We need to be quite clear about what we're doing. So there's a hell of a lot of, sorry to say that word, sorry, there's a lot of work going in from staff to make sure that when somebody goes online, they can log exactly the right repair so that we can get there as quickly as possible and do the correct repair first time. And obviously being able to book appointments as well would make that an even better situation. So I think you know, we've talked about it, but when you actually want to do it, it's a lot bigger than you think, and you need to put a lot of work in to make it right, which is, I'm sure Annabelle will add to this in a minute.
May I just ask quickly, can you already upload a short video online just to show people what the problem is, or put at least photos
just
up?
about to ask that.
Yeah, we have been putting videos on things like YouTube, Lucy, but we've also got the situation now where
Could I, as a tenant, upload a picture of my dripping tap?
Yes, you can. Yeah. Well, there's also video calls now where tenants can show us on video live. When we do that now, to be honest, it's getting tenants to buy into that a little bit, but actually they have the capacity to do it either with the customer service team or my surveyors to show us what's wrong. So again, we can make sure that we put the right job on, send the right trade out, get the right materials there, and so on. So yes, that happens. But then them doing it themselves online where we're not interacting with them actually does have its difficulties for us to get enough information to make sure those things still happen. And that's what we're working through, making sure that it works as well as it possibly can.
Having used the live feed that Steve was on about, you know, like the video, show us what your problem is. I've used that and it really is really helpful. You can pinpoint the things. So that is a really good move. Annabelle.
Hi, in answer to Lucy's question, can you upload a video? You can email us a video. Is trying to read it our side, but with the the repairs diagnostic procurement and process that we've got now with Hornet, there is the capacity to upload photos and videos, so we view them through there, so that should be a lot easier. We're also undertaking working with the City Council to do a new telephony platform procurement. And whilst we were talking about digital offer, there'll be a lot of digital offer in a telephony process because there will be chatbots and automated responses. So you might ring customer might ring, but they might not necessarily get through to a person, but they've resolved their query, and that's kind of been a successful customer journey for them. As Steve said, we've got the video calls, and that is really, really useful. And it is so much more efficient to be able to see what the customer sees, to be able to diagnose the problem there and then. Interestingly, later on, there's a paper about our customer first, and the promise in the customer first is that we will not remove face-to-face or telephone accessibility for people who choose that. What we do have to do is promote heavily and put a lot of effort into making that probably the least favourable option. So if it's easier to go online and do it online, and you get a good response, and you get your repair sorted, or you get your query sorted in a very quick and positive manner, more people will use that. But we still have to be very aware that not everybody is online or uses online services, and we don't want to penalise anybody. So it's such a balancing act, because whilst you always leave the phone as an option, some people will always phone. So we'll just have to really make it snazzy, I think is the way.
Dennis. You're on mute, Dennis. You're on mute, Dennis.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it off.
All right, thanks.
As Annabelle just said, there's a lot of people that aren't online that will really struggle.
Yep.
My wife won't even have a mobile phone.
There you go.
So there's people there that, you know, as older generation, they say, I'm getting on a bit now, so.
But yeah, you're right, Dennis. I agree with you. There's a lot of people, and I think it's, having had my experiences over the last 3 days of ringing other companies, there's a lot of organisations who don't consider those who don't want to use IT. Is that it, Dennis?
Yeah, they just ignore them, don't they?
Yep. Anything else, anybody? Okay, moving on then. happy to move on. Kaz, you anything to add?
No, I think very, very intelligent, balanced conversations from people and contributions. So thanks very much for that. And no, nothing more from me.
Sarah, I'm going to put you on the spot. Anything you'd like to add from that perspective?
No, not from me. I'm only in week 2, so I'm just observing and taking it all in.
No, that's good. Chloe?
No, nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, thanks for your input. Are you guys off now then, are you? Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks for your input. And Kaz, once again, appreciate what you've done. Thank you. Right then, we'll move on to A2, Operational Board Forward Plan. Is this you, Lorraine? No.
Well, I'll take it, Chair.
Sure.
It's just for noting, if any members have got any comments on the forthcoming reports. What I will say though is that the one right at the bottom, the confidential rent arrears. I know we haven't spoken about rent arrears in the performance one just, but I'm very keen for Jazz to attend the next meeting and have that element confidential, so we can really tell you what's actually happening.
That's good.
In a closed environment,
That's good.
and the challenges that we're facing with certain tenants. So that will be useful to provide the operational board there. And actually, a few more months later down the line, I think we'll start to see the real impact of rent arrears, which, Derby is not unique. Everybody's rent arrears are going up at the minute.
No, that'd be good, Michael. Thank you. Anybody else got any comments? No, we'll take that as read and noted. Right, A3, value for money.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
We've just spent an awful long time talking about performance, and what we have to do with performance is balance it with value for money. And what this report presents to the board is a couple of ways in how we measure the value for money. Now, it's obviously based on our actual financial figures in the year 21-22, so it's for the year to March 22. And it focuses on two aspects. The first one is rather a complicated set of benchmarking figures that we're obligated to do as part of preparing our accounts, and it's because Derby Homes is a registered provider. So our regulator requires us to do these benchmarks in a particular format. And if I'm honest, they're not the most relevant of benchmarks, because Derby Homes in its own name only owns just over 100 properties, whereas it manages 12,500 properties on behalf of the council. Whereas if Derby Homes was a housing association with 12,500 properties, they would be a lot more relevant. So I wasn't going to touch on any of those ones, but I would be happy to take any questions on them. What I wanted to just highlight was the Housemark figures, and for members who aren't aware, Housemark is probably the industry standard benchmarking organisation for social housing, and Derby Home submits figures each year, and we get a Housemark report on how we benchmark against it. And there's a couple of tables which are in section 411. And what those look at are the cost per properties, and this is a key one that we do look to measure ourselves against. So these are the cost per properties of managing a Derby one, and we compare it against the median of the peer group, and that peer group is 39 other landlords who've got between 10 and 15,000 homes, and we've got 12,500. And what it obviously shows there is that our cost per property are significantly less than the median costs of that peer group, and Derby Homes are in quartile 1, which is the top quartile for costs per property. What we don't want to happen, though, is to be very low on cost at the expense of our performance and satisfaction. So it's very reassuring that the table just slightly further down has got a number of the KPIs, and again it shows that the satisfaction levels on those KPIs is placing Derby Homes in the top quartile or second quartile for a couple of them. So in very, very broad summary, the financial value for money for Derby Homes is quartile 1, and the performance is in most cases quartile 1 with a couple of quartile 2 areas. So the conclusion from the report is that in my opinion, that Derby Homes is providing excellent value for money of the services to its tenants, and that can be evidenced by both the Housemarque reports and within the metrics that we do on behalf of the regulator. Happy to take any queries from this report in the attached appendices if there are any.
Okay,
I was going to see a few hands.
Dennis, then Jan, I think it is. Yeah, thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, 411, the Housemarque. I think it's very good, the housing management costs. But responsive repairs, are we spending less than other organisations? Are our houses in better condition that we don't need to spend?
Yes, that's exactly it, Dennis. Derby's in a very fortunate position where I was going to say all of our stock is actually at decent home standard, but it's all bar the, is it 60 or so properties at Bretton Avenue? Yeah. Because we had that £100 million plus investment in decent homes, the base condition of the homes are in pretty good nick, and therefore in relative terms the cost of the responsive repairs services is probably lower than other organisations who haven't got to decent home standard yet. So that explains why repairs is at this responsive repairs is at this lower type of level at the minute.
Yeah, but the major works and the cyclical maintenance, that is really low against others, but yeah, it'd be better to break it down so we can see the cyclical maintenance, because to me that's really important, but it don't seem to be happening.
Well, just to explain why it is so low, and again it is linked to the cycle of a decent homes replacement. What we'll find over the next few years with significant investments in kitchens, roofing and latterly bathrooms, there will be a significant increase in spend on those types of components. So we'll see that figure going up, and obviously it's purely dependent where other providers are on that side of their major component replacements as well. In terms of the cyclical maintenance, that is happening in Derby Homes. We've got £1.4 million worth of planned maintenance budgets on internal, external painting and repairs prior to painting as well. So there is planned maintenance works happening of a revenue nature in addition to what's happening on the capital side.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We just had a new roof and very pleased with it. Thank you.
Oh, excellent.
That's Ian's team. I don't know if it's one with solar panels or not, but
yes, it's got solar panels on, yeah.
So that's really good news. So that should save you probably anywhere between £200 and £400 a year. The fact that you'll have solar panels within your roof. So that's an excellent example of where we're looking, currently looking to help on the decarbonisation objectives by incorporating things like that into the standard replacement of components.
And they look very attractive too, Dennis, don't they?
Yeah, it's only just happened, but we've still got the scaffolding up yet. So we're really moving.
Oh, we've deflated
me. I don't say anything about scaffolding to Steve.
I take it I'm next, am I? For solar panels?
Well, it'll be based on the replacement year of your roof.
I know.
Chair.
Sean and I have this thing going. Jan,
sorry.
Thank you. Really just to say thank you to everybody, and what a reassurance it is to know that we know that Derby Homes is a good performing housing organisation, but to actually see that the value for money figures kind of like match up with that as well. It's a really good news story. So and a reassurance for board members as well. So thank you very much, everybody.
And I think on the back of that, I think Steve, you repairs guys particularly, you're telling me these days that value for money comes into it, and looking at long-term effect. It's no good, say for example, replacing a length of piping if you think it's going to go in 6 months' time, whatever. So you now look at the bigger picture, and cost-wise, it's better to replace maybe a length of something rather than just part of it.
Yeah, there's much more communication these days between mine and Ian's teams on the basis of if we do things on programs, like a program of roof works, potentially we'll have less repairs to do later on, which is in reality is cheaper in the long run to do that. Yeah. So there's a lot more communication going on about what programs we can do, what we should be looking at next. Or with roofs, for example, the other week in Sean's meeting, we talked about where potentially we think it will be a good place to go, because obviously we're getting repairs reported about roofs. So if there's an area of the city having a lot of repairs, then obviously we will tell Ian and his team, and hopefully that is what it is taken into account as to where they'll go next. So it does work like that. But yeah, repairs at the moment are going okay. We're frankly, for the board, we are still finding it quite difficult on longer term repairs at the moment as we've come out of COVID. And there's a lot of work going on about trying to bring that down and looking at the priorities we've got and making sure that we don't get too many urgent priorities, which mean we have to cancel longer term jobs. So there's a lot of work going on, and the sickness situation with COVID as well, with staff being off. So there's a lot of work going on within the teams and with other people to try and make it work. Then the one thing I was just going to say, Dennis mentioned about scaffolding and mentioned my name. Scaffolding on people doing new roofs is not me, Dennis. It would be Ian's team.
It is my responsibility, Dennis.
I'm not taking responsibility for Ian's team on that one. Most of the scaffolds of the city are ours, but not those ones.
Okay. Any further queries on the value for money report at all? Dennis, you still got your hand. Is that a legacy hand?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No further questions? Happy to accept the report? Yeah. Okay, Ian.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'm going to do a tiny little preamble before our guest runs through a few items with you. You'll remember at the last meeting we had a discussion about that was raised consequent to a question in the B section report about the appearance of some of our sites due to the extended cycle and frequency of grass cutting on some of the sites, and the service we referred it up to the board. A report was prepared for the board on the 28th of July, which they discussed and have reported back to this operational board, and that's part of the subject of the report. One of the things I recommended was that Street Pride come along and do a short presentation just to highlight the issues that they're facing as part of this report. So invited Lee Wheatley, who manages the contract for us at Street Pride, and is going to deliver a short presentation to you.
Thank you.
I'll put it on screen if that's okay. Would that be okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
So Lee's hands are free.
Okay. Apologies, Ian. Can I drive?
You drive then, Lee.
Some changes to it.
Yeah,
is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Okay. Okay to proceed, Chair.
Yep. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So I'm just going to. All right, this is a new screen. I'll just say I'm just about to try and share my screen, but it's been a while since I've shared, and things have changed. Bear with me. Hopefully you can see that.
That's it, Lee.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so yeah, thanks ever so much for having me along to talk about the grounds maintenance service in particular and some of the challenges we've had this season. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Street Pride, it's made up of a number of services such as street cleansing, fleet management, recycling, refuse collection, including grounds maintenance and arboriculture, which I look after. So the grounds maintenance team itself is split into three. So we've got one team that looks after the north of the city, one team that looks after the city centre and the south of the city, and then of course we've got a team that looks solely after or for fulfilling the Derby Homes contract. And as you can see from your screen there, all the wonderful sorts of things we get up to. Not necessarily any of our sites, but that's not because not any of our sites look like that. It's just because we haven't got a good enough photographer, I would argue. But yeah, so we've had some challenges this time round, this season, and typically when we review performance between Street Pride and Derby Homes, it tends to be around frequency of cuts. And to be fair, it's not a bad indicator. You know, if you're going around as often as you should be, the site should look fairly decent. But it's not the be all and end all. We do need to have a look at the qualitative side of things as well. So frequency of cuts is very much output focused, and we need to think about the outcomes as well. So we could be going around and hitting the frequency, but we could be just moving dust around, or we could be leaving sites in an unstately manner, or an unsightly manner even. So we need to be mindful of that going forward. But we've had some challenges, not just unique to this season, but going back previously as well. But I want to share and talk about some of those as well. So these aren't excuses because they're not unique to the department. They affect the other services within Street Pride, the council, and certainly Derby Homes as well, I'm sure. But staffing and recruitment is a big one for us. So in terms of rates of pay, we've got there's 34 staff on the Derby Home side of things, 30 of which are gardeners, and they're split between what we call a gardener 1 and a gardener 2, gardener 1 being skilled, gardener 2 unskilled, and a gardener 2 starts on around about £19,500. And one of the things we try and sell as a council are all the council benefits that come with it, such as flexible working, which they can't do because they're frontline staff, but also the other benefits like the cycle to work schemes and all the various other schemes, which actually they can't access either, because as soon as they apply for a bike, it pushes them below national minimum wage, and so they can't have it. So it makes it really difficult to sell the role in terms of pay. It's on there, it seems quite trivial, but parking is a big one. When somebody's sat in front of you and you're interviewing them, and then you mention there's no parking on site, the eyes roll back, and that's the interview over pretty much. So that's another big one for us. And then we've also got retention of staff as well. So we've got a mix of ages within the workforce, but we do have an aging workforce. So we have some retirements and ill health retirements there. But with the aforementioned things, it's quite easy for people to leave the role and get better rate of pay, and even if they don't get that, better conditions in terms of parking, which suits their lifestyle. So we do have some challenges around recruitment and retention. We also have we've got to mention climate change, because it affects us massively what we do. Particularly this year, we had some very, very challenging weather to begin with. So it was wet and it was warm, and so to begin with, the grass was very difficult to get on top of, and it was growing quickly when we did get underway. So it was a difficult start to the season, and then as soon as it became really, really hot, it presented other challenges as well. So we have longer mowing seasons now. So back end of April to the end of October, we're mowing. So we're mowing for longer, and it puts the equipment, the planting equipment that we do have, under duress. When we had those 2 or 3 week really hot weeks, the equipment, particularly the ride-on equipment, we spent a lot of time in the workshop, so we had a lot of downtime because they're overheating, and we're having head gasket fails and things of that nature. So yeah, the climate does have a big impact on how we perform, and it's only ever going to head in the wrong direction for us, really. But then in terms of performance, we've got staff with restrictions. So we talk about the 30 gardeners we have got. We can't assume that those 30 can all pick up the same equipment and work with that equipment for as long as each other. Particularly those staff that are seasoned, shall we say. They've worked with us for a long time, decades in most cases, and it's a frontline role outside all the time, and it's manual, and they're just worn out, and they stay with us until they're worn out pretty much. And so they have restrictions upon them, and by and large, the most restrictive one is around vibration. So all our kit vibrates pretty much. And so over time, they can work with that less and less. And so they get a points figure individual to them. As soon as they hit that points, they have to put that all vibrating equipment down for that day until the following day. So that presents operational challenges, and we have to move people around so we can make the most of what we're trying to achieve with each team. But that also extends into people who might just fall over, have an accident. They're put on lighter duties as well, so that hampers us quite a bit. Up until recently, I've been working from paper run sheets, which has just been really, really inefficient, hard to track performance, hard to find the opportunities for improvement. So that's been a bit of a bind, and also the landscape has been changing as well. So back in the day, when it was about 7 or odd years ago, when there was a roundtable discussion on what the service needed in terms of resources, people, equipment, it wasn't really based on anything tangible. It was more intuition and experience, really. And so since that day, the physical landscape has changed. So we had certain type of equipment with a certain mowing width, a deck width, and we could go in and out of sites, on and off sites without much hindrance. Now there's a lot more fencing, a lot more railings, gates and things of that nature, which means we've had to reduce the width of the machines we use. So when they do get on the sites, then they're less efficient. They have to spend more time there because the mowing is narrower, but also it takes a lot longer to get on and off the sites. And take a given site, it's probably not a massive deal, but over, you know, the 323 sites we've got on grounds maintenance and the near 500 sites we've got on garden maintenance scheme, it really does add up and slow us down. And you know, we find ourselves having to speak with the estates team and get some of these things unengineered because we can't get onto these sites. So that's changed. And also, when the service started on garden maintenance scheme, there was about 250 properties, and now approaching 500. And so things have changed around that as well. So just to revisit all those things again, in terms of staffing and recruitment, we can't do a great deal about rates of pay, but what we can do is start to put rungs on the ladder in terms of a career path for people who want to progress. So it's going to help with retention. And so we're working on a way to transition a gardener 2 to a gardener 1. It's about £900 worth of difference between the two posts. So it's not a massive amount to most people, but certainly it's to them. And so there's running a process for that. In terms of parking, there's a feasibility study going on at the minute that also affects London Road, I believe. So that's being factored into that. But we're doing things like we've attended many job fairs recently, some collaborative with Derby Homes, such as on the marketplace and with enthusiasm. We've been to the council house and the velodrome as well, and we've got some more coming up, just to sort of proactively go out there and comb for applicants, because the type of applicant we tend to attract often have difficulty with literacy skills, so reading and writing. I don't mean a little bit, not genuinely. And so expecting them to be surfing the web, find the council website, find the gardener post in there and fill out the online application form is a big ask. So we've gutted the application form and made it a one-pager for people and streamlined that. We've got open adverts now, so rather than have a start to an open and close sort of process, it's just an ongoing thing. And we're going to start and build up a bank of applicants. So even when we become fully established with FTEs, we'll continue to interview, and then we can keep a pool of people ready, so they're not going to go through an application process. And that's just a more commercial way of looking at things. And we're also starting to work in collaboration with other partners, such as Broomfield College, and work on how we can just dangle a bit more of a carrot for people, so they hang around a bit longer. But around retention, the North and the South grounds crew, they differ slightly.
No,
sorry, did someone say something? I
no,
can only see one person.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I've been distracted there. Sorry.
That's all right. So the North and the South crews, they do all the typical sort of mowing duties similar to the grounds maintenance scheme for Derby Homes, but they differ. The North crew has what we call the trusty trader scheme, which deals with our kind of commercial arm. So they maintain 25 schools and nurseries within the city and as far out as Belper for income generation. And then the South of the city team, they look after the city centre vibrancy projects, which are projects buried in manifesto pledges, climate change action plans and such. And so there's lots of nice niche project management type roles that people can get the teeth into. And when we've got agency staff on and we're taking on these agency staff, as soon as you tell them they're working for Derby Homes, it immediately puts them off because the variety of work isn't there. So this year round, we've still got the focus on frequency of cuts and the quality of the cuts, but we're also starting to inject some projects like the No Mow May campaign and also the wildflower meadows. And we're going to, through conversations with the estates team, and Ian and James and Richard, start to introduce some of the other schemes that we're doing in the city centre, like the living walls, the living columns, pop-up forests and things like that, because it helps add value to the service we provide, and it also helps with keep people interested. And it has done it. There's been a noticeable improvement over the last 12 months in terms of attendance and conduct issues being reduced as well. So it's been useful. So that's retention. So not much we can do about the climate other than I plan on introducing seasonal hours. So a bit like fishermen, if they go out and do some fishing, they're going to go out for a set period of time during the year, and they're going to have the rest of the year off. It's not quite as hard and fast as that, but it is dividing people at the minute. So adding a lot of hours to somebody's already working week in a frontline capacity is quite harsh. So what I'm proposing is at the start of the season, when it's most arduous, is to have a longer working week by about 3 to 5 hours. It doesn't sound like much, but the Friday at the minute is pretty much half a day, so it make that a full day, and it's just going to help break the back of it. And then the time that they accrue over those first couple of 3 months, they can take off during the less busy months over winter, when we're doing the winter works and training and development. It's less busy. So that's what I'm proposing. It does divide opinion, and the unions are really hot on it. So but that's the direction I'm headed in with it. In terms of sort of equipment going forward, just need to make sure our supply chains are robust and resilient. A lot of the agricultural equipment that we do use is from overseas, so we just need to make sure that we don't cheap out and get a brand that's going to go bust or move and parts aren't available anytime soon. And that's particularly difficult at the minute because a lot of manufacturers have closed their books to us in terms of getting hold of equipment. And then when we do get quotes for things, it's like a 12-month lead time. That quote lasts a week. So it is a challenge, but we've started putting staff that are gardeners into the workshop as a development opportunity that have got some mechanical experience, just so that when there are periods of sickness, because only 3 mechanics in there, they can help maintain, ensure that the servicing programs are going on and repairs are happening. So a little bit of resilience in there from the grounds maintenance side, gardeners going in, that is. And then on a performance front, so in terms of restrictions, we've next week I'll meet with corporate health and safety because we've been trialing a digital system that measures and monitors their points exposure to vibration, and it's the HAVs, the hand-on vibration stuff, that keeps people working from equipment the most, so it affects productivity the most. And with this digital system, it should improve operational availability, if you like, because typically they would record their exposure on a paper sheet. That exposure would, whether it's right or wrong, would be the same week on week, because they're not counting point by point, they just record some broad times. And so by and large, they're recording figures that are, which way around is this, much lower than what it, sorry, much higher than what it actually is, which means they're down in tools much sooner, whereas the watches that they're wearing will tell them when they're getting close to their individual points restriction, and so they can work for tools much longer. So that's going to help us out there. Intelligence, we've moved to a digital system called Whitespace, so a lot of our functions are on there now. All of Derby Homes is on, most of Derby Homes are on there now, so it means we can scrutinise not only the runs themselves, but the individuals on those runs, which is going down really well, but does help us out. In terms of the landscape, not much to say about that really, but can't ignore the fact that we look after the voids as well. They tick over quite nicely and don't really get much aggro about them. And we've not mentioned it, but we do have the arboricultural team as well, which works really well. So they do tree planting, tree inspections, and works on trees and dangerous trees, and they are very busy. So there's one arboricultural officer and a few arborists, and unless something's really, really urgent, their lead-in time is 6 months. So if anything comes up, it's a 6-month wait. So they're incredibly busy and they work very hard. But we do have economies of scale. I've just closed my book and I've just thought of something. One sec. We do have economies of scale, better ways of working, we'll call it. So we're proposing that through conversations with the estates team, Ian, Richard, James, that if we were to take on an additional number of staff, and we're calling that number 4, that's going to help bolster the mowing teams at the start of the season, and then they can be transitioned partway through the season and towards the end into a shrub team, hedge reduction team, pruning and that sort. So it's going to help improve the frequency of cuts, basically. What we've demonstrated previously is that other than ebbing and flowing a little bit, any kind of, intervention like the ones we've talked about just now give us marginal gains. It's really the people on the ground that give us the performance. So the proposal is to take it up to 30, I think it's 36. It's in the report, 36, yeah. So and other things as well. So sort of street pride, pick up the tab for the mechanics, and that's fine. And where we do some major hedge reductions, we'll pull on the resources in the wider grounds maintenance team, like on the mowers, the tractors and the sidearm flails that we've got, and various other places like the forest. We've just had all the bark from that. We don't need to buy bark this winter period, or not as much of it, because we've got it sat there. So there's something to be said about the collaborative way we work as well. But that really is a whistle-stop tour, and they're kind of the headline things from me. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. Appreciate your time
coming along. Right, anybody got any questions? No hands up, I see. Dennis, go.
Rat.
That's right. Yeah, it's that Dennis again.
Hiya, Dennis. Long time no see.
Yeah, to me, every year we get this, blah, 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 what's his name? And they want more money, but we haven't seen the service improve. If the service had improved, then I was quite willing to give them more money. But every year they come, 120,000. Oh, no, it's peanuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always want more money. And if we got a real good service, then I'm surprised Tony ain't got his hand up.
Yeah, he has Dennis.
His hand is up.
And Jan.
You beat me, Dennis.
Crikey, Moses. just to come in there then, Dennis. So, as we mentioned previously, so when the figure was first drummed up, it's been accepted that was enough, and I'm proposing it wasn't. So on the back foot straight away, I'm suggesting we'd never had enough staff to meet the offer that Derby Homes are putting out there to its ratepayers. So it's kind of saying now that that plus the fact that we've got more land to maintain in more arduous conditions, we really need. And I'll be honest, with the additional 4, there won't be a step change. There'll be a change, but there won't be a step change. And that's just a harsh reality of it.
Tony, I think you were next.
Yeah, I'm just echoing what Dennis says. This has been an ongoing item for I don't know how long. I think it's a permanent one on the operations board. Certainly as regard leaseholders. As Dennis says, we pay the service charge for a service that we don't seem to be getting. Now, we've heard all your problems, Lee, and I sympathise with them. But at the end of the day, you're providing or you're quoting for a service that Derby Homes has asked you to provide, and you're going to come back to us and say, well, if you want it, this is the price. Well, if you get the price, we want to see the service. So it's a bit chicken and egg.
Yeah,
it is. And I suppose if I was honest, Tony, if with the offer that's sort of publicised on Derby Homes' website, I'd be asking for more than 4 people. But I can't, because it's not going to go anywhere. And it's a challenge because it's not been right from day one as far as I'm concerned. And this doesn't span the last 12 months. This is from inception. And we did an exercise, so it's demonstrable. In the height of the mowing season, we took pretty much everybody off GMS and we put them on GM, and we reduced the turnaround time from 4 to 5 weeks to 10 days. And then as soon as we reverted back, the performance reverted back. So and in that original figure, there's no slack in that. So holidays, sickness, it cripples teams. So it's difficult. It is difficult. And I understand where you're coming from. I really do.
I mean, have you looked at what other authorities are doing? I mean, is Derby unique in being unable to provide this service adequately?
It's not unique to Derby. It's not unique to grounds maintenance. It's worse in other areas. So in the arboricultural team, it's even worse because they're highly skilled and highly qualified, and people can walk out of Derby City Council and earn 10 grand, not in a local authority, not in the public sector, but in the private sector, they can earn 10 grand just like that. And so we're going out for our 6th time for an arborist now. And we've benchmarked ourselves with APSI, Association for Performance Sector Excellence, and this type of thing, and our rates are competitive. We win work. At Belper High School, there's a strong possibility we're going to win this money from the Football Foundation. So our rates are competitive. It's just we've started in a place that was woefully under-resourced, in my opinion, and now it's clawing it back. And every time we come back, it looks like somebody's coming back cap in hand, but my predecessor tried, and the predecessor before that tried, and so we fight every day to do the best we can in the conditions we've got. Nobody's sat around, sort of wasting time or wasting money or wasting resources, and that's all I can sort of offer to you, really.
And we have far better data, don't we, than we had. That is true, than we had when decisions were made 2.5 years ago, as to where the team are, how many sites have delivered on any particular day. That reporting is a lot better. So decision making is got more clarity, I would say, than we had before.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. And we produce weekly reports, which are scrutinised, and we meet regularly and pore over them. And whilst we talk about all these digital ways of working and all the rest of it, it's marginal gains rather than step changes.
I mean, do you have a detailed contract of what Derby Homes is asking you to do? Because I come from an engineering background, and if Rolls-Royce quotes for an aero engine, it guarantees a certain thrust, certain weight, certain fuel consumption, and if you don't meet that, Rolls-Royce has to pay penalties. So if you're not delivering, we're still paying you for not delivering, which is where we're coming from.
Yeah. So there's no client contractor contract, if I get your terminology. What there is it's not even a service level agreement really, but there was a not sure what the word is for it, but there was a number of resources, a gold, silver, bronze option that was set out from the outset, and the middle road was chosen. Although I've got some comments around the suitability of those numbers, but
I mean, if you can't deliver what you're doing at the moment with the staff you've got, there's one part of the report that says, should we be having a working party or something like that to look at what we're actually asking you to deliver? I mean, sometimes longer grass looks better than the sort of mess we get at times when you come along and just cut it. The trouble is, if you leave it longer and then mow it, you get a load of sort of grass left on the thing, and it looks worse.
That's right. And the equipment.
I don't know quite how you get around that. The overall thing is you want the estates to look decent. And quite how we do that.
I mean, it's. I think some of it's managing expectations. So, if people are expecting a manicured bowling green, we're going to struggle to achieve that with any resource. But so I forgot my other point then. No, it's gone. It's come back to me.
If I could move on to Jean next, if you don't mind, Tony.
Not at all. I'll come back if I need to.
I'm sure you will.
Please do.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are actually to the officers of Derby Homes, really. So firstly, 4.2, there's a mistake in the report. It says the board chair raised that this was the first occurrence that the operational board had raised a concern about the service. I think it should be that this wasn't the first occurrence, because it was actually the second time that we'd raised the issue. I was going to ask if anybody could remember the details of what the main board had proposed or approved 2 years ago when the additional staff were put in place, how many staff it was. And obviously the report has come through really, really late, and if we'd have had a little bit more time, we could have asked for this, because I think it is really important that before it goes back to the main board, all members of the operational board understand, a number of them weren't around at the time, understand how much money was allocated previously as well. And then I've just been really, really concerned just listening to the conversations as a main board member, just really concerned that I'm now being told that actually the figures were wrong, that were presented to us at board, that we had, it was so serious. It went to the main board considered it, proposals were brought back to the main board, and now I'm being told that they were not accurate enough, which it raises some concerns with me. And I think that's probably all I'm going to say, because I think that sort of explains everything. So,
Lucy, I'll take you next because Michael, I think, has just been left the room. So Lucy, you want to add your point?
Yeah, thank you. And there were 3 points that I was wanting to think about. One, Lee, you said that the prices must be right because you're winning contracts. Could it be that we're winning contracts because our prices are too low?
Fair point.
I can come in on that, or do you want to go all through all three?
Yeah, let's do them one at a time.
One at a time.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's some things we can absorb because there's benefits. So, for example, if you take Derby Homes and Street Fright, there's benefits that often don't get measured. So, for example, if we don't have to buy a ton of, well, several tons of bark because we've already purchased it in the wider DCC grounds maintenance team, that comes in. If we use other equipment and other personnel on the DCC side, that gets lost. It doesn't get kind of captured or measured anywhere, but it happens anyway. So if a request comes through from the estate maintenance team to pull this piece of work in, blah blah, we can use the wider grounds maintenance team to fulfil that. But at the same time, because we're somewhat familiar with managing other contracts that are hard and fast contracts, as Tony referred to, when we price for those, we have to be very careful we don't cripple the service, other services at the same time. So we can absorb a little bit because of the wider network of the team that we've got, but we can't, we can't just pitch for work that's at a really low price just to win it, because
no, you shouldn't do that.
I'm accountable for that, and I have to do budget monitoring regularly and explain why I'm overspent or not. So it's foolish of me to try and win work that way.
No, the reason for winning work outside the outside the city, outside the council and the council's envelope, is because it can bring additional value into the council and help support the other services. So I just wanted to make sure that we are working that way around and not cross-subsidising something in Duffield.
Yeah.
No.
But
I just take that away. The second thing I was going to mention is your comment that it's not as attractive to do Derby Homes work as Derby North or Derby South work. Now, Derby Homes, every property in Derby Homes is either in Derby North or Derby South or in the city centre. So could there actually be some savings, both in terms of personnel movement loss and also in distance between sites, if you took the Derby Homes work and didn't give it to a dedicated team, but allowed the people who were already working in those locations to do the work?
Logically, it sounds like we could. It has been tried before, where the city was split into 4 quadrants, and so the quadrant maintained everything, not just the Derby Homes side of things, but the schools, any litter picking and fly tip waste and stuff. The problem we run into is each of those 4 quadrants need additional machinery, and then it soon become unworkable.
Well, how about 3/3? So that, because you've got 3 teams at the moment, you could divide the city into 3 and have the equipment that you've got now. I don't know. You know it better, but I'm just thinking, particularly in Littleover, where we don't have a lot of Derby Homes properties, but we do have quite a lot of street grass, or we have public open space grass, and couldn't we be pulling in the Derby Homes grass at the same time as doing those other bits?
It seems counterintuitive, but it does result in needing more equipment. So it's more maintenance, more upfront cost.
Even on these odd bits. Okay, and the other thing was really something that was touched on, maybe by Jan, I'm not sure, but whether we ought to be rescoping what we're actually asking for. And if we are asking for something that isn't satisfying the people who are paying for it and isn't easy to deliver, maybe there is something that is going to satisfy and is going to be easier to deliver. And that would be the working party that was suggested to say, well, what do we actually want?
Yep. Essentially, you could have a tiered approach, because at the minute it's a blanket offer of, say, things like pruning. Well, if you have a look at many of our grounds maintenance schemes, no pruning required, but it's out there anyway. So you might want a tiered approach. Potentially, it certainly needs another look at, I think, because we're operating a 7-year-old model.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, I know you've been waiting patiently there.
Yeah, just want to expand upon Lee's point about the underlying low pay in councils generally. So just for background, this contract operates on an open book basis, so the costs that are incurred by the Street Pride team are recharged over to Derby Homes. Now, Lee mentioned that the base gardener pay is around 19,500. And I think the majority of the existing 32 staff are on that wage. Now, what we know for this year is that the LGA have offered a pay rise of £1,925 per spinal column point. These gardener guys are likely to be at the lowest end of the pay spectrum, so that plus a day's leave. They're going to get at least a 10% pay rise in this financial year. That's going to add £100,000 to the cost of Derby Homes before we do anything, and we've not got that in the budget. Looking ahead to next year, the Low Pay Commission are expecting that the national living wage will go to £10.32, and in the year after, for April 24, it goes to £10.95. So at £10.95, that's 15% more than the current £9.50. Now, the national living wage is not directly linked to the local government pay ones, but the LGA, and they've lobbied the government about this, are saying that they want to be paying above the national living wage. So it is likely that whatever happens, the base pay of the lowest paid council local government workers are going to go up to it. Let's say it goes up to, say, the £10.95 an hour type of mark. So for our existing workforce employed by the Street Pride team, there is going to be significant increases in labour costs just before we stand still, and eventually that will translate through into a lot higher service charges for our tenants and our leaseholders, and that's just on the existing service before we even consider getting the standard service up to the required number of operatives that like Lee is suggesting. So I fully accept discussions are required around re-specifications and things like that, but if we think the service is too expensive to tenants and leaseholders now, you'll see in the covering report Derby Homes is subsidising that by £500,000 a year, and that's all those tenants who don't receive that service are losing or subsidising it to those tenants who are receiving, and those leaseholders who are receiving that service. And that subsidy is only going to go higher and higher unless the councils decides to increase the service charge up by a significant percentage, not just the 10%, a significant percentage, to get the service charge to match the cost of the actual service. But it's abundantly clear, the feedback from the operational board in the leaseholder forum, that the service is not commensurate with the charge already. It would need a 50% increase or something around those figures to actually equalise the service charge income costs with the actual costs. So apologies, my 2-year-old is just coming at the most inopportune time.
Junior board member.
Yeah. Just a minute, Harry. So I appreciate all what's been said, but we just need to remember that there are significant cost pressures on the service going forward. Now, actually, perversely, if wages did go up by the levels that I'm saying that they could do, that might help in future recruitment and retention.
Yeah.
But there is going to be a significant cost increase going forward, I'm afraid, irrespective of what we decide to do on the additional 4 or not.
Okay, thank you. Ian, you've been patient waiting to come in.
No, I've just waited to mop up at the end, really. Tony's hand was up, it's gone down again now. So
yeah. I've got a bit to say, but I'll wait till you've all finished off for I'd my bit.
Put it back up, Ian.
Go on then, Tony. Go on.
No, I accept that prices are going up. It's a question of chicken and egg to some extent. If we saw an improved service, we'd be prepared to pay for it. But if you put the price up and we don't see an improved service, then you're going to carry on with these sort of moans, which is why You know, I'm saying maybe if you can't deliver the service that we're asking for at the moment, we ought to have a working party of some description with representatives from across the city.
I think so.
Saying what they'd like to see, what would be acceptable in their area against the prices that you'd like to charge.
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, Chair,
Jan.
could I just come in? Yeah.
Yes, please.
I think that I've just calmed down a little bit. So I think that Michael's points are really, really sort of pertinent and to be thinking about the cost. And that's why I was asking, I would have liked to have seen how much we'd put in previously, because we were having exactly the same conversations.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry about that, Lee, but we were exactly the same conversations. And that's what really made me sort of concerned, was being told that actually the figures that had been presented to us were not accurate. But that, you know, that's another thing. But I think that we're in a sort of a different situation again, that we know that there are going to be higher costs coming for the organisation anyway. We've always said about the subsidy for the garden maintenance scheme that, you know, and with this, then it's going to be increased even more. And there is a sort of fairness about that, about all of our tenants as well. So it's kind of for those things to consider. But I kind of have got some concerns, having been in the same position a few years ago, where we were having almost the same discussion, and we actually agreed to put more staff in place, and actually nothing has changed at all. So yeah, thank you.
Right. I'll say my 10 minutes, and then Ian, you can wrap up. I think everything that's been said tonight is absolutely true. I seen the figures. We've been promised. You're right, Jan. It's a pity Louise couldn't access those figures, but yeah, it's you're absolutely right. We've had this conversation. You and I have been on the board at exactly the same time. We've had these conversations, and it just seems to be. And I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, but then we're told tonight they're all wrong. So it doesn't really help the situation. This is not a personal attack on you, Lee, by the way. It's just the service.
No, not at all.
But I'd like to add at this point before I go on is the guys at ground level who deliver the service to me and my colleagues, etc., do an excellent job, and we mustn't detract from that. When they've been to me, I've always sent photographs in to say what a good job they've done. So this is not aimed at the ground level staff. They do a lot of hard work under difficult conditions. But I just think, I take up everybody else's point. I think it needs a fresh look at, what was the words it said? The contract or whatever needs a fresh pair of eyes. It needs
scope of the service, in a way you're saying.
It just needs to be looked at. And I just think and Janet, I share your sentiments exactly. You know, now I've said before, here we go again. We've changed gardening services to try and get a better service. There's no point in, you know, so Lee, don't take this personally, but I just think something's got to be done about the service and the cost. And I think revisit it, as I said earlier on, is a must.
Can I just mop up one or 2 points that have been raised?
Yes, you can, Ian. Yes,
Firstly,
please. The
reference Jan made about the report about the first referral to the board. That's actually a minute from the board meeting that took place in July. That's where I've taken that from. So that's whoever attends board next time then needs to correct that if that isn't a fact. Secondly, I remember coming to this committee in November 2019, or it might have been the first week in December. That was my first 3 weeks at Derby Homes, and we brought that report to this group here, and the figures were based, and the manpower requested was based on an awful lot of discussion between probably my director, my predecessor, and Street Pride, and at the time they were what they viewed to be the required number of operatives to deliver the service, which Lee alluded to about the quality of service. But at the time, and I think we found this now with recent experience, the level of intelligence they got on what was being delivered and when and by whom wasn't available. And we've got that now. The quality of reporting this past 12 months has improved considerably. The cost of that proposal at that time in November 19 is effectively what we've got now. I brought reports to this committee at least twice a year for the past 3 years, and each report, if one looks back at them, has great detail. In fact, I cut it out this time because I thought you might be fed up with reading it. I've been back. In fact, the board report that went to board on the 28th detailed that, when it goes back to first principles about what resource was required and what extra plant was funded at the time. And effectively, that's what it is now, because we haven't increased the resource since that date. It might have been inflated through wage increase, etc., but the actual establishment's the same. The plant that was invested at the time is the same. Nothing has changed. So what you see, Michael's financial current financial assessment of the service, that's effectively what we agreed to at the time. So that does show you where we are. But if you as a group want us to go away and review the scope of the service and what services provided to whom and what that looks like financially, and then we bring that back to you, then that's a directive I'm quite happy to go along with, and we'll work with Lee and the team and my team to come up with that. It will probably need some good levels of consultation as well. It's not just a case of going away and coming up, officers coming back with something. It needs it needs some consultation. So that will take a little bit of time. That's not something you do in just a month. So, but happy to do that if that's the direction you'd like to go.
Lee, I think you've been waiting a little bit, and then I'll have Tony after that.
It was just very briefly, just coming on a couple of points. So, Michael, I don't think it's the subsidy, but certainly the fees that come in, I think they also pay for the estate maintenance team. It's not solely Street Pride service, I think. Might be worth just checking that. So I think we do definitely need to do some work around by what measure does good look good. Because if we're determining it on frequency of cuts, then we have a problem. Because we can cut the shrubs back to within an inch of their life, but they're really, really old and they look terrible and they need gutting and some investment. If you want it to look pretty and look nice and good in that respect, then it needs some investment. It's not about cutting them back, because a lot of them are knackered. So there are lots of little things like that. We just need a stronger look at what does good look like. I've known a few of you for some decades, and I'm not a liar. I'm not going to sit here, and on Lucy's point, Councillor, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything to win another year here or anything like that. I'm going to say it how it is, because I think from that point we can move forward.
Yeah,
agree. That's it, really.
Tony?
Yeah, just picking up on Ian's consultation point, it needs to be across the city, because the city grounds in different areas have different problems. I mean, where we are on the Rickbold estate, it's hilly, it's difficult to mow. We've got various shrubs and bushes, none of which have been seen to this year at all. People look after various areas. You could probably work with them to make things better. It's a question of involving the communities and making sure that they have an input into what you're trying to deliver.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's Michael, then Ian, and I think we're conscious of time after that, guys.
Yeah, Lee's quite correct. The actual overall cost of what we call the grounds maintenance service is inclusive of the tree service, the path inspections, the element of the caretaking service within Derby Homes, and the depreciation on the vehicles that Derby Homes own. It's just that when you look at I think what we've concentrated on exclusively today is like the core element of grounds maintenance. Yeah. Just to pick up on Jan's point about the additional resource that we put in a couple of years ago, I've just looked up the board report. We funded at the time then 4 extra FTEs and 2 vehicles on grounds maintenance. That was 144,000. And 2 extra FTEs on the garden maintenance service, 57,000. So roughly 6 staff and a couple of vehicles, £200,000 a year investment a couple of years ago. And I think the recommendation is now for additional staffing. What's not costed into that report is any associated plant and equipment for those extra people if they were taken on.
Okay, Lucy, I think, and then we'll have a final discussion on it.
Can I just pick up Tony's point about working with the local community. It's not going to work everywhere, and I wouldn't expect it to, but we know there might be learning from the way parks work alongside their Friends of Parks and the Derby Parks volunteers to see if there are people within Derby Homes who would like to take more ownership of this open spaces around where they live, and some will and some won't. But if they are there and people can be working together, then it could be a way that people will actually get more of what they want around where they live. So just to pick up on that, and I think that we need to be also bearing in mind things like the biodiversity deficit within the city, the climate change situation, and these bigger pictures to feed into what people should be considering in the way in which we are looking after the estate. We don't want Derby Homes, people to look at Derby Homes land and say, oh, it's behind the times because it's not thinking about biodiversity while it's in the way it's being looked after. We want Derby Homes to be up there leading the pack, not dragging its feet.
Okay, guys, I've come to the conclusion. I think we've probably draw a line under it if we can in time. I'm conscious of time. If I could have a proposal from the floor.
You want me to make a suggestion, Chair? Am I allowed to do that?
You can make a suggestion, yeah.
Okay, well, we've got a recommendation 1B, which was to maintain existing staff levels and monitor improvements. So we pick up on all the initiatives that Lee's proposing,
yeah,
and what we've suggested in the report, but then add to that a review, if you like, of the service and the service level and what the service looks like going forward with a thorough, consultation period, and we'll use our in-house teams to help facilitate that.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like that.
Could we add a time? Could we add a time frame onto that? So if we were to start doing that now, would we be able to have something that would be different in the sort of 2023 growing period, or is that going to be too tight in terms of budget development and that sort of thing?
But I think timeframes are good, aren't they, Lucy? At least you know what you're working.
Oh, we want a time frame, but what I don't want is a time frame that says it's 8 weeks and we just rushed.
No.
Shan, you got a point you wanted to make.
Yeah, just to be aware of the budget stuff when we're looking at a new sort of service.
Yeah.
That what I wouldn't want to see is for it increasing in price, because I think Michael's points that I keep going back to it. It's really, really important, really pertinent that already that service doesn't pay for itself, that there is subsidy in there, and that if the costs increase, then there's going to have to be further subsidy as well. So I just think that we would need to have that sort of at the back of the mind. I wouldn't have been able to recommend to the board for additional staff because of the budget sort of issues. So I'd kind of think that point still needs to be made if we're looking at a different level of service, that it's got to fit to the budget. It's not a way to get additional sort of do you know what I mean?
So that helps in a way, doesn't it? Because that takes the fact that we need to, the budget agreement gets in the way of the consultation. We can in fact do it in a sensible time period then, doesn't it? Because the cost isn't going to go up, not through these proposals.
No.
So
in my comment, I think it's why we are scoping what is needed, and I think it's looking afresh. It's not saying that we're going to be making the same sock from the same materials but manufacturing it differently. It's because we're going to have a different sock, and it's going to be created in a different way. It's going to be doing a slightly different purpose, and we're going to help people co-produce what people can have in terms of what they want. So I don't know what all those options are, but Lee, you and your team are going to be key to ensuring that we're coming up with options that are practical and relevant and potentially acceptable.
And I don't quite know where it needs to go with the main board as well, as to if we sort of make sort of come back and there are major changes, whether that has to have board approval as well. So
Yeah,
that's
probably
something to consider as well.
Right, I think time, guys. Who's going to be brave and make a proposal then? Because obviously it's chair,
I was just going to say, is the time period? Do we say come back in the February, March? Because then if it's accepted, we can implement that in that year, can't we? 23, 24.
Yeah, I agree with Ian.
Michael, if it's within the same budget envelope, that would be all right, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because there will be an inflation allowance added to the contract anyway. But that will be on the basis of the assumed establishment continuing as it is. So I think what we're saying is, if we know that the overall budget available is roughly the same as the current costs plus likely 10% inflation, what we'll have to do then is design a new service within that cost
budget
framework. On just the grounds maintenance element, we haven't discussed at all the garden maintenance side. And I think, to be fair, the other areas, that the arboricultural sides, estates and well-managed highways, that those areas are all okay. It's the garden maintenance side and the grounds maintenance side that are significantly subsidised. And I can't say what I need to say around the budget setting for next year yet, because we've not started the consultation. But I'm very conscious that the council is fully aware of the cost of living impacts and would look to minimise increases as much as possible, which is fully understandable. So we are likely to continue with this level of subsidy for a good number of years.
Shan, in the final point.
I just think it's with so myself and Lucy have sort of, and Tony and Dennis to some extent, but we've got other operational board members, and I just think it's really important that we hear from all of those as well.
Yep. So just a quick round the room, guys. Was it Jan? Was it Lucy? You put a proposal that we stay with the service and we'll do a scoping exercise. Was that the proposal?
I think something along the lines of review the service offer. So stay as we are and review the service offer.
Yeah. So that was the proposal. Right, I'll go around the room. Jan, what your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Lucy?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm just putting some words together in the chat, which I will share with people shortly.
Right, Dennis?
Yeah, I agree.
Where have we gone? Kevin?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Alan?
Yeah, happy with that.
Fine. And I don't think I've missed anybody, have I? Myself, I'm obviously go with the proposal, yeah.
Only me, Bob.
Oh, Tony, we'll leave the best till last. We'll leave the best till last.
No, going with the existing thing and looking at the service provision seems sensible.
Louise, have you managed to capture that at all?
Yes.
We sit here and talk over, but it's poor Louise sitting there, fingers go working to the bone that she captured it. Thank you, Louise. Right, I think we've done that one then. Thank you, Lee, for your time, and also Ian, your input is much appreciated.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Chair, I've just come up with a short bit of words, which I hope summarise it. If people are happy with that, then maybe it'll work for Louise as well.
Just looking for chat to come. Chat, there we go.
Thanks, Lucy. Yeah.
It probably means potential options needs to be expanded a little bit on grounds maintenance for.
I'll just confirm, Lucy, this is what you're proposing, to ask officers from Derby City Council and Derby Homes to provide potential options that can be shared with the board to put to customers later this autumn with a view to changes in the 2023 growing season. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate that, Lucy. Right. I think we're on home release policy now, aren't we?
Yeah, that's mine. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible because I know that time's moving on. Just to give the members a little bit of background though, when we allocate properties at the moment, we always look at people's needs, and we wouldn't be, people would not be under occupying properties at that moment in time.
However, we do provide secure tenancies for people. Therefore, if we're giving larger families properties, it's inevitable that as the family grows and they move on, that people do end up under occupying properties. There's no requirement for people at that point to give up their properties. But obviously, in the climate that we work, it would be, and with the lack of properties we've got, it's very beneficial for us if people do downsize. Therefore, the home release policy was created with the aim of encouraging people through incentives to do that, and over time it has been successful. However, in doing this piece of work, thought it was important to do some research about what other people offer, and to do some consultation with tenants. Now, I think what was found from that is that the tenants felt that it was largely still fit for purpose, but there was also a lot of other things that people do provide, other providers, that encourage people to give up their tenancies, and also very conscious of the fact that with the cost of living crisis and the fact it costs a lot to heat properties, that it may well be useful for people to consider. Therefore, it was worth looking at the incentives and whether we could encourage more people, because obviously if it does encourage more people, then it's of great advantage to us, with the lack of building space, the lack of properties available, to get some of these properties back. So basically, if you've read the report, it will give you a number. It's suggesting that we put in a number of extra incentives. Obviously, by doing this, we will only know by trialling it whether it does bring back more properties, and it would only it would only be beneficial if that happens. What I will say, though, is even if you do agree with this proposal, it is one that would have to be agreed through Derby City Council. The money, it would involve putting extra money in up front, which would come from the housing revenue account. The budget on the housing revenue account has to be looked at and whether that can be balanced. So there's no guarantee that even if this is put forward, that it would be accepted. But basically, it's being put forward on the basis that we put in some extra incentives and see whether it does encourage more properties to come back to us and for people to downsize.
Dennis?
Yeah, can we relax standing orders?
Oh, Dennis, where's the time? Dennis certainly can. Are we all happy to relax standing orders, and we'll wrap up as soon as we can? Thank you. So
6.2.
Yep.
Percentages again. From the people who responded is 63%. Well, why can't we put the numbers like they have in 6.1? They put 158 people, 70.85. But in this, does it make it look better that it's 63% instead of a number 7 or 8 or 9, whatever it is?
I'll be honest with you, Dennis. I thought we'd covered this in a previous meeting. So yes,
Well, it says 60% were female, 37% were male, 37% were over the age of 60.
Yeah, and I get that.
Yeah, you must know the numbers. It's dead easy. To work the percentage out is harder than put the bloody numbers in.
Okay, Dennis, that point taken. I mean, on that, I don't think it's trying to fudge figures in any way, because I think all it really shows is there was more females than males. But I do take your point.
Yeah, it was discussed before, Lorraine. What does it really represent in terms of percentages? Jeanne, I think, then Lucy.
Just wanted to say, really good to see the equalities impact assessment. Thank you very much.
At the back, yeah. Thank you.
So,
Lucy.
Thanks, Chair. I'm really pleased to see this policy coming through, and I think that it was timely to be talking about it. And it was a fairly small sample in the responses, as Dennis has pointed out, but it does suggest that people who pay a bigger pay more attention to Derby homes than most, which is why they're doing this, still don't know that there is a policy that will enable them to do this. Shows that there is a lot more publicity needed. So I think that's a really useful learning point. In terms of the policy, just a few points, and I'm sorry I haven't listed them in my notes against the document, but there was talk about I'm not clear who would potentially be paying for the removals and repainting, whether that would be the HRA or whether it comes from some other fund, because it's not itemised. The policy isn't clear about you either get your house repainted or you get a painting voucher, and I think it needs to be. There were some really moving comments in the survey. Some of the comments that came back from people in the survey I thought were really useful. And what's not included here, and I just wondered, at least, I don't know if it already happens, is that would you get if you were on Home Finder and seeking to downsize, would you get extra points on there to raise you up your priority anyway?
Well,
good question.
What's suggested in here now, which will help the process, is that there will be an advisor that would work with the person. So we would be looking, there is scope within the allocations policy to give advantage to people in these situations. So we would look at what we could do within the policy to make sure that we can take advantage of that, Lucy. In terms, it wouldn't be about extra needs, but there are ways that we can actually do things within the allocations policy that means that we can take business advantage of taking back that property.
Right. Because that's one of the things that was raised, and I think that was important. So the end point is really, I hope that we can make the finances to do this stack up. I hope that it is something that will work. So yeah, I hope others feel the same.
Tony?
Yeah, I take Lucy's point. There were some interesting comments from the survey. The one that struck me was change of tenancy. If you're moving from a secure tenancy into some other registered social landlord, do you maintain that secure tenancy or do you lose it? I mean, that's one of the issues that might stop me wanting to downsize if I was in this position.
Fair point.
Yeah, there shouldn't, the tenancy would remain the same, secure to secure.
That's good. Michael?
Just picking up on the cost for clarity, we're proposing here that all of the costs, including the cost of the additional incentives, would fall on the HRA, not prejudging what's going to be coming through as part of the budget consultation. But I think we just need to bear in mind that if these suggested improvements are rejected by the council or suggested that Derby Homes fund them, it'd be interesting to ask the board members if they think these incentives should be paid out of Derby Homes' budget rather than the council's budget.
Fair comment, Michael. So as it stands at the minute, are we happy to go with the recommendations? Those against? Thank you. Is this yours now, Annabelle?
Yes, I've waited ever so
You've
patiently.
waited, yeah.
It shouldn't be such a long one, if I'm honest. I'm talking about the customer first strategy, which is 2022 to 2025. We initially launched the customer first strategy in 2018, so it's a revised, reviewed document that's brought in the updates from the social housing white paper, and how it respects the relationship with the customers and the legislative requirements. It also brings in things that we've learned. We've learned a lot through COVID, the perfect storm of a pandemic, and how we deliver our services and how we put our customer central to that service delivery. And we've put we've asked customers to feedback on the proposed updated strategy against the 4 key outcomes that we're looking for, and how we want to make sure that we are providing services that are accessible, which is what I talked about earlier, the opportunities for feedback and scrutiny to learn and improve our services. It's across the organisation. This isn't just a strategy that fits with the customer service team. It impacts on every single part of the organisation, because we are all here to provide a service to our customers.
Absolutely.
That element of the customer service strategy definitely, I believe, needs embedding more across the organisation, and that's a piece of work that Maria and myself will be working on with the leaders network to try to cascade that down. We've got some feedback from the customer voice. So the survey went out prior to this paperwork coming out to yourself. So it went out to the virtual panel, and 15 people responded to the survey. And I'm hopeful, Dennis, that the survey paperwork might have come out, but it does have numbers and percentages in, so we're okay. I just double checked when you spoke to Lorraine earlier, thinking, oh God, he's going to pick me up. But 14 people agreed with the vision of our vision of customer first. 14 people, again, 93.3% agreed with the trends of what the customers would like to see us do at Derby Homes. So that's making it easy for them to contact us. We talked earlier about the balancing with the digital strategy, but we have a vulnerable customer base. We cannot discount them. We cannot not have phone services. And I know we talked about that earlier and we were passionate about that. Last night I had a call from my father-in-law saying I need a blood test being booked. I went to the hospital, they won't book it for me. I don't know how to do it. And so it's those kind of services where you think that's really disappointing. He's 88. And so it's like, upset him, we've sorted it. We don't want to be that provider. We want to be able to listen to our customers who want to talk to us. We want to process our customer interactions digitally if our customers want to do that digitally, because it suits them and the journey should be pleasant. We want to make for them customers to contact us when it's convenient to them, be clear on what they can expect. 86%, which is 13 responders, agreed that we develop our online service offer to our customers. So there was quite a feel of, yes, it does, and it does need developing. Again, we talked about that earlier, and there's lots of fingers in the pie working on that, so that's good. 93% agreed with the 4 key outcomes, and there were some interesting comments which I liked. There was a number of comments about ensuring we still provide services face-to-face over the phone, so not completely digital, and we take that on board. I love this one. When you've promised a call back, call them back, because it's a big bugbear to mine. Because if we're going to say we're going to call you back, let's call you back. Even if it's, I'm calling you back to say I don't know the answer yet, but I'll ring you back when I do. But
that's important, Annabelle. If somebody says I'll call you back and they don't, yes. I'm very strong. I feel very strongly on this one, because we've had instances within the organisation where customers have been promised callbacks and they don't happen. Even if to say I've not forgotten you, that's really good. It's good customer service, and I get really annoyed when that doesn't happen. Yeah, I'm absolutely the same. So one of the comments was listen to our customers, and that needs to be absolutely what we do. Not assume, not think we know what the customers want. Actually listen to what the customers are telling us and take that time to understand that listening, and that needs to go across the board. And there was again, Annie, sorry to interrupt. Do the I can't remember how they work. Do these customer service advisors then say to the the customer, can I just check my understanding? What you're saying is, and do they actually do that? That's good. Yeah, they do. Because sometimes it's very clear what a customer is asking of the customer service advisor. Sometimes it's not very clear. So we do double check that. But again, this needs to be much wider than the customer service team. This needs to be across the board. For all customers. Absolutely. And then there was a comment which I thought it was just interesting, so I thought I'd share it with the operational board, and I think particularly for you, Ian. Somebody kind of suggested that there's the ability to be removed from a home decoration or a gardening service if it's not meeting the customer's needs. Now, at the moment, I don't believe it is something that you can opt in and opt out of. You're on it with the property or whatever. But it's not really. We need to listen to what that customer's saying to us. So I thought I'd share that with the operational board and give that gem to you, Ian. That's been said about white goods as well, hasn't it, Annabelle? At some point, they've said that about white goods as well. I think white goods is probably easier. The furniture packs. We do sometimes dip in and out of those, and they can be removed from a property. Yeah. So that's the customer first strategy. It doesn't really tell you massive amounts of new information because it's an ongoing working document.
there, I am aware there is a customer service audit which is going to be discussed at SMT soon, so that will feed into this with actions of what's going to be undertaken.
Can I just feedback? Sorry, Bob.
Go on,
just to reassure you on some of your points, we also do quality monitoring as well within the customer service team, so we're able to listen to calls. So it's not to criticise stuff; it's so we can learn from them and we can see what's coming in. So we found that really useful. So if we do find there's different issues within the team, we can pick different themes every month when we do that monitoring, and we found that really beneficial.
It is, because you can get a case where I've known a case where the call being recorded was the agent's best friend, because it proved that the accusation levied against them wasn't said, and that can work in that favour as well. And also, it can have a good ending. Somebody can be said something good about the customer, it's not been picked up, or about the agent, so that's good. So how will you measure the success of this?
I think we have to keep asking our customers. We need to look at trends and themes through complaints, because that's one way of identifying what we're doing that's not isn't satisfactory for our customers. We need to work with other teams, so definitely with the customer engagement team, to look at this customer survey feedback and look at themes and trends from that. And it's looking about asking our customers what is important to them in accessing the services and the services that they're wanting to receive from us. A really good example and a long conversation, what we just had on the grounds maintenance and the gardening service, that is, customers are passionate about that.
Yes, they are.
So that's where we need to listen to what the customers are saying.
So can I ask, sorry, Alan, let's ask this question and I'll let Alan come in. So if, getting back to my point, if somebody's promised a call back, say, I'm not going to, just think of department, say somebody, your guys on your phones take the call and they say, I'll get somebody from department Y to call you back.
Yeah.
Do you find that department Y will say, or tell the customer this?
Sometimes.
That's not fair. It's not fair.
Sometimes. And what we've recently had, all members of senior management team have done a back to the floor exercise, and they've spent time with the customer service team, which has been really good. And they've identified things, efficiencies have been suggested, different ways of working, and we're processing all those through. But I think what was Maria was very, very passionate about was the fact that people kept passing things back to the customer service team rather than accepting, here's a call back, please call back the customer. You don't need to then come back to the customer service team and say, customer service team, this is what you need to tell the customer, because we're double handing. That's not efficient or pleasant for anybody. We keep copious notes on the open housing system about customer contact and what they've contacted us for, what the callback is about. Granted, sometimes we need to put better notes on, and we monitor that and check that. What we've also got starting from October is a patch manager on a rotational basis coming to spend time with the customer service team in a two-way learning stream.
That's good.
Should this be a callback? If not, what's the response? Can we learn that response so that we're reducing the amount of callbacks, because we can answer the question for the customer and resolve it there and then? Or if not, we can explain to them why it's a callback and when they'll get a callback.
And I'll leave you with this thought. How would you feel if, Alan?
Yes. Actually, on callbacks, I've had a few historical issues where I've put a complaint in and been told, right, I will pass that on to the manager concerned. The manager concerned has never got back to me, and I've rung up again to ask about it and be told, oh, well, it's marked on the system that it was dealt with because it was passed to the manager. That's one issue. The other thing is your survey of you've had 15 replies. Is that not a cause for concern? We've got a large customer base.
It was sent to the virtual panel, and what I don't have is a number of how many people it was sent to. I don't know how many people are on the virtual panel. Unfortunately, Holly's not here. Responses are, it was quite a short time frame for responses. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question, Alan. I'm really sorry. But going back to your callback, we can run reports on callbacks that have been raised, and then you can identify if it's been actioned and who's not actioned it or not put any notes on. I personally would like all managers to run that on a weekly basis.
And just to add to that, Alan, what we are starting to do is map out different customer journeys now. So on a basic level, we want to see how the customer gets A to B, making sure there's no hiccups or anything going wrong for that customer, because it should be going as smooth as possible. We shouldn't be putting barriers in place. So we're doing a lot of learning like that as well by following the customer's journey.
That's good. It's good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Are we happy to accept the recommendation?
Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
Thank you.
That must be now 8, I think we're on. The Multi-Faith Centre.
No, 7 leaseholder.
Oh, sorry, 7, sorry, Tony, sorry. I've got 2 pages open here, sorry. Leaseholder, sorry. And who's leading with that one?
This one's my Bob, so I'll take this one.
Yeah.
It's the 3-year review of the leaseholder policy, and to cut it very, very short, the only change to the policy is the addition of the planned new policy around a major works repayment plan, which we're currently in consultation with leaseholders about, and we've had some feedback from the council's legal team, and we're going to be feeding that back to the leaseholders at the next leaseholder forum and looking to develop that repayment policy. But in terms of the wider leaseholder policy, there's no changes proposed other than that new major works repayment policy. So just happy to take queries on the policy as it's currently proposed and drafted.
Lucy?
Yeah, give me something to read and I'll find something quite often. The three things. One is we had at the last meeting, we had a discussion about pets policy. And I couldn't see any reference to the pets policy in the leasehold policy. And I just think that maybe it ought to be a reference.
Yes.
Well, I think the reply to the pets policy was that it's referred to in the lease, and we are looking to, because it's a standard condition of the lease, the new leases as they're drafted, it would be managed as part of the lease. It's difficult to enforce it on those where it's not mentioned in the lease. But it wouldn't be things like that wouldn't be included in the leaseholder policy, because the pet policy is similar to dozens of other housing management related policies that leaseholders have to comply with.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. In 6.0, there is talking about how you're going to be meeting each other, and I thought there might be maybe a reference to when is an introduction between somebody who is becoming a leaseholder. And I just wondered whether there ought to be a virtual meeting as an option there, as well as a phone call or a face-to-face meeting, just to add in a virtual meeting or some similar wording. On point 7, it talks about the leasehold forums. I'm not sure, are they leasehold forums or are they leaseholder forums? But it says how often they are, but it doesn't say who's allowed to attend or how they take place or how you can find out details or who to go to if you want to attend or you've got questions. So I just think it needs a little bit more fleshing out so that somebody can know whether it's something that they want to go to or not and how they could go if they wanted to. And finally, there's reference in 12, and I've just said free repayment policy status. What do I mean by status? Does that jump to anybody?
what was that? Sorry, where it says status. The
12.0 repayment policy, and I've just said status against that. Why would I have written status?
Oh, status. You mean what the current position of it is?
Oh yeah, yes. It sort of says it's going to be changing.
Well, we're going to ask the council to actually introduce one. There isn't one at the minute. Theoretically, leaseholders have to pay back major works within a 12-month period as per their lease.
Right. So if Derby City Council approves that in October, November this year, this policy will then be out of date. So we just need to keep tabs on that and update that paragraph as soon as it has been approved.
Perhaps I should word it. If I'm going to change the wording on the others, I'll word it in anticipation of the council adopting a policy.
That gets round it.
Or something. Yep.
Okay. Tony.
Yeah, just rereading this again, and in view of some recent problems, 5 under leaseholder obligations. Leaseholders wishing to sublet must first seek Derby Homes approval. I think that needs strengthening, that they ought to have a meeting with the leasehold manager to make sure they understand fully their obligations in subletting, rather than just saying, have a look on the website.
That's a good point, Tony.
It makes a lot of difference if you put the wrong tenants in.
You're absolutely right, Tony. Is that doable?
It's doable, but I don't know how enforceable it is, to be honest.
I'm not saying it's enforceable. It's just a question of really reinforcing their responsibilities. Derby Homes, through the leasehold management team, have an excellent way of dealing with leaseholders who are resident, and also to some extent with leaseholders who are subletting. It's just the expertise they bring to their role ought to be stressed to people who are subletting, rather than just sort of, sticking anybody in a block of flats. Causes all sorts
I get your point,
Yeah, well, I'll add something along the lines to say that Derby Homes will offer a service to explain the practicalities of subletting.
That sounds good, Michael.
Very good. Anyone else? Are we happy to pass the recommendation?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
With the amendments discussed.
With the addendum, I think this brings us on to A8. And I think, Michael, you said you'd pick this up for us. If there's any questions.
Yeah. Just picking this up on behalf of Maria, who is probably at the end of her holiday now. Okay, so there's a recommendation to the operational board to use £10,000 of the localities budget that we've got set aside this year as a grant towards the multi-faith centre in Derby, and that would supplement the council's intended £30,000 contribution as well by the form of their grant. The detail of what the grant will be used for is explained in the report itself. I think we'll just jump to the recommendation and see if the board do approve that grant request.
And have we got any questions on it before we move on? No. If we look at the recommendation, are we happy to support this grant?
Yes,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's a good idea. There we go. Tony says, yeah, that's it.
I think Chair is particularly pertinent given the things that have been happening in Leicester recently.
Absolutely.
I think if there is learning, and the important thing is to how we extract the learning from this and make use of it afterwards.
And as always, Lucy, the valid point, lessons learned. I know it seems like a throwaway phrase, but there are lessons to be learned. Let's learn them. Okay. Josh, that's as far as I can see it. There's no point.